Hey guys, Meta recently announced and released the mixed reality headset, the Quest 3, and some of the clips have been blowing people away.
You want a hot latte?
Yes. And I would like your breakfast sandwich.
Waiting for the elevator in mixed reality is crazy.
Now, Meta has spent billions on the metaverse with very little to show, but is this the first sign that the tables could be turning and Zuckerberg's dreams of a metaverse could be coming true? If so, shareholders are going to be very well rewarded. Meta is my largest stock and I pay attention to the stock closely. That's why I'm really excited for earnings week ahead. That's right, it's earnings season again, and a bunch of huge companies are all reporting. So in this video, I want to talk about specifically the Quest 3 and the metaverse, but also some of my predictions for the stocks that I hold that are reporting earnings next week. There's been a healthy amount of skepticism when it comes to VR, AR, and the metaverse, especially in the investing world. But I do think that the Quest 3 has the potential to be a game changer in the space. And it might also be the reason why Apple decided to join in as well. And that particular reason is mixed reality or augmented reality. It's the ability to see the real world around you almost as if you didn't have the headsets on in the first place, along with the virtual reality at the same time. It allows a huge number of new functionality that wasn't possible with pure virtual reality.
So I used the virtual keyboard floating in space with my dirty hands, and I started typing into ChatGPT, what other spices can I put into my soup that taste good? Pulled out some spices out of my cabinet. It gave me some instructions and some feedback, and I kind of ran with it.
This clip really demonstrates the power of mixed reality in my opinion. He's wearing a Quest 3 headset, and although he might look a bit weird from a third-party perspective, he can see around himself perfectly fine. And he's even able to cook, which might be a pretty dangerous activity without being able to see, and do it perfectly fine, whilst also having the convenience of having a keyboard and monitor effectively set up floating in the air that he can consult for any cooking tips on the fly. His hands might be dirty, so he doesn't want to touch his phone. You don't have to get your phone out of your pocket, you don't have to unlock it. Everything is right there for you and it's very convenient. For a generation like myself and the one younger than me, I can definitely see that people who are generally glued to their phones anyway are going to find a huge amount of convenience from this. Now, previously, gaming was the only real accepted use case that investors and general people thought VR has. But now things have changed drastically. With you being able to see things in real life, I can see many usages of the smartphone being replaced by VR and mixed reality. And I believe that is why Apple decided to get in on the space. It's a natural evolution of the smartphone experience to being one where you can just generate a screen wherever you want. Historically, it's always been gamers and tech nerds who are the first ones to adopt new technologies, whether it's PCs, the internet, or even electronic handheld devices like the Game Boy. But it's only when these technologies mature to a level where they're able to provide benefits to general audiences that businesses that provide these services start to explode profit-wise. And I genuinely I'm starting to believe that Meta could be on the cusp of this, with VR previously only being used by gamers, but it now having potential uses. Just think of people sitting on the train, and rather than just looking at their smartphone, they can just keep their head up and watch a movie on a screen that's floating right in front of them, far bigger than a smartphone. I just see so many uses for it now. Previously, I was a lot more neutral on the prospects of the metaverse with Meta, as it was spending a huge amount of money on the technology, nearly $36 billion over the last 5 years, without really returning much back in the way of revenue, only around $5 billion over the last 5 years. So over $30 billion in losses. But I also saw it as being kind of neutral because if the metaverse didn't work out, the business could easily just return that money to the shareholders instead, and it would go straight into the free cash flow figures if they just abandoned the Reality Labs portion of the business entirely. But now I'm actually a lot more confident in the prospects of success for the metaverse, and I do see this as really bullish for the stock. So what about sales? Well, we don't know that much because the Quest 3 was only released around 2 weeks ago. Early predictions before the release by analysts indicated that sales were not going to be doing that well, but I do personally think that the virality of some of these VR clips recently would indicate that there is potential to be a huge amount of sales, especially over the holiday season. And there have also been a couple of articles which have indicated that there is limited availability of the Quest 3 in some locations, which would indicate a good selling amount. Ultimately, we have to hope that Meta gives us some kind of indication of its expectations for Quest 3 sales at the earnings this Wednesday, but they probably won't be able to give us that much of an update as there haven't been any sales in Q3, only in Q4. Some people have stated that the Quest 3 at $500 is in a completely different price bracket to the Quest 2 when it first came out at $300, and it might mean that it's unaffordable for many Americans and internationally. But I don't really believe that the value of $500 is significantly more than $300 3 years ago. Just look at inflation, and the consumer economy in America is still going strong. It's only really debt-fueled purchases that are actually being slowed down and affected by the rise in interest rates over the last year. But it could mean that the sales of the Quest 3 aren't as high as they would have been around 3 years ago or 2 years ago. But I still think that they'll be good. I think Reality Labs will be a slow burner or one for the future. But what do I predict for the upcoming Meta earnings this week? Well, broadly, I think that they're going to be really positive, with advertiser spending having gone up significantly throughout this year, and consumer spending has still not been affected by rising interest rates. I do think there may be some kind of impact later in the year from the unpaused student loan repayments, but it only happened in the last month of Q3, September 1st, and I doubt that even for that last month, consumers will have had any time to adjust their spending habits. So advertisers will probably be still spending a huge amount of money on Meta. I also am really looking forward to what Meta says about its AI ad recommendations and partnerships with advertisers to help them recommend ads to users in a more efficient and effective way. That's going to really impact the business and help Meta's primary social media business. Another massive advertiser that I own, Google, is also reporting, and I personally think that they're going to do well for the same reasons as Meta, with advertiser spending going up. But the key metrics that I'm going to be paying attention to is the total losses of the YouTube division, as well as keeping an eye on how much the cloud growth has accelerated again this quarter. So last quarter, Google's cloud was the first ever profitable quarter for it, and this quarter I want to see it increase. I expect it to, but I want to see how much it's increased by. And with YouTube, I'm really interested to see the losses as compared to the previous quarter, because they have recently launched a campaign to crack down on ad blockers. And I personally think that this could be an attempt by YouTube to finally make the platform profitable. And I also see the ad blocker crackdown as being very similar to Netflix's crackdown on password sharing, the exact same concept. It's going to cause a huge amount of people to rage and complain online but ultimately they probably won't stop using the platform and it will give YouTube money. So even though as a user I'm not massively happy about it, as a shareholder in the company, I think it is a positive. Visa and Microsoft are also reporting. I'm expecting good earnings from Visa as consumer spending, like I said, has not gone down. And I do think that their earnings will be a good barometer of how the US economy is handling interest rates. And with Microsoft, I also predict them also beating expectations as they've done so for many quarters in a row now, and cloud growth is simply not going away anytime soon. So overall, I'm relatively positive about the earnings to come, and I will be doing some reaction videos to some of the earnings too. So if you did enjoy this video and had any thoughts on the Quest 3 or earnings week to come, then please let me know in the comments and give me a like and subscribe if you made it this far.